During World War II, the North African campaign was a crucial theatre of operations. The struggle for control of the desert posed a significant challenge to soldiers on both sides. They had to contend with extreme conditions and adapt their tactics to overcome the difficulties of fighting in this terrain. In today's video, we'll explore the challenges faced by soldiers in North Africa and the tactics they used to succeed in World War II. If you enjoy this video and want to see more, hit the subscribe button. It's free and really helps the channel reach more history lovers like you. The deserts along North Africa are an unforgiving environment, with extreme temperatures, sandstorms, and scarce water resources. During the day, temperatures regularly exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit or 50 degrees Celsius. At night, the temperature can dramatically drop to below freezing. The intense heat during the day made it difficult for soldiers to move around and carry out their daily duties, while the cold temperatures at night made it difficult to sleep and rest. The combination made the average soldier lethargic and not at their peak performance. The terrain in the desert was also a challenge. Sandstorms could whip up at any time, reducing visibility to zero and disorientating the men who were unable to see or hear anything. If caught outside in a sandstorm, a soldier's best chance of survival was to stay where they were and wait for it to blow over. In addition, the lack of cover in some areas of the desert made it difficult to launch effective attacks. Soldiers had to adapt to these conditions and use their environment to their advantage. For instance, digging a shallow pit helped the men shelter from the wind, the sun, and the sand. Surviving in the desert required significant preparation and resourcefulness. Soldiers had to carry all their supplies with them, including food, water, and ammunition. Also, they had to be able to repair equipment and vehicles, and often had to improvise solutions for problems in the field. One example would be a soldier using sandbags to help their vehicle gain traction in the sand. Also, the use of spare parts salvaged from damaged vehicles was common. Water was a crucial resource, and soldiers had to find ways to conserve it and make it last as long as possible. The lack of water was an issue for the men, who typically had to survive on just 1 gallon of water a day. This was barely enough to keep them alive in the harsh desert conditions, let alone use any for cleaning themselves or for cooking. Soldiers had to be resourceful and use every available means to conserve and ration their water. Commonly, helmets were used as makeshift containers, as well as water bags made from goat skins. These were filled with water and then hung from the side of a vehicle, allowing the water to cool as the vehicle moved. Fighting in the desert presented unique challenges. The terrain limited visibility and mobility, making it difficult to launch effective attacks or to retreat. The desert also made it difficult to dig trenches or fortifications, leaving soldiers exposed to enemy fire. The extreme heat and lack of water also made it difficult for soldiers to maintain their physical and mental abilities. Many suffered from heat exhaustion and other illnesses, such as dysentery, before fighting even began. One particular challenge in North Africa was the threat posed by tanks. The German tanks were faster, more heavily armoured, and better armed than most Allied tanks. In addition, the Germans used tactics, such as tank hunting teams, which were smaller groups of soldiers armed with anti-tank weapons, who would attempt to ambush Allied tanks. Having such a big and wide open space made it ideal for tank warfare, though many of the supply routes to key objectives were heavily defended with minefields and anti-tank ditches. Erwin Rommel, the German commander in North Africa, believed his tanks would be the key to success in the region. Certainly early on, his panzer division saw success, pushing the Allies back, but soon another factor would come into play from the sky. Air power was critical in North Africa. Planes could spot enemy positions from the air, provide air support to ground troops, and disrupt enemy supply lines. The RAF and the Luftwaffe both played important roles in the campaign, with both sides using their planes to devastating effect. Being that areas of the battlefield were so remote, utilising aircraft to survey an objective prior to any battle was priceless. Another tactic used by soldiers in North Africa was the use of camouflage. Desert warfare required them to blend in with their surroundings to avoid detection by the enemy. Soldiers would often use sand-coloured clothing and paint their vehicles with desert camouflage to make them harder to spot. In addition, soldiers would dig shallow trenches and foxholes to provide cover and concealment during battles. If they were lucky enough to be in a rocky or slightly hillier terrain, this could provide shelter from the elements and conceal them from the enemy above. One particularly successful tactic used by both sides involved cutting supply lines. Because of the vast distances and often remote locations, food, water, fuel and ammunition would come in via aircraft or by truck. If the attacking force could stop this supply, the defenders would have to eventually surrender. The Germans implemented this strategy on a number of occasions with success. Ultimately, the North African campaign in World War II was a challenging theatre of operation for soldiers on both sides. The extreme conditions of the desert made it difficult to survive day to day, let alone fight a war. Many of the men who fought there would go on to fight further campaigns in Europe. In a polar opposite situation for some of these men, they would face some of the coldest winters Europe had seen for decades. Between September 1940 and May 1943, when the campaign ended, Allied casualties were just under 250,000, while German and Italian casualties were over 600,000. The fighting that spanned from the Atlantic Ocean on Morocco's west coast right the way to the Suez Canal in Egypt caused devastation to the populated areas. But perhaps something at the time that wasn't considered was the longer-lasting effects of the war. Millions of landmines were buried right throughout the region, of which thousands of civilians still to this day are dying or being severely injured by these silent killers. So even though the North African campaign finished more than 80 years ago, the region is still taking casualties today. What did you think about the fighting conditions faced in North Africa during World War II? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you want to expand your knowledge and join the growing Premier History community.